welcome to my channel. I'm glad you're joining me here today. I recently got a question on my Book of Shadows tour video I posted a couple of months ago that really got me thinking. The question was, how do you actually use your Book of Shadows in your daily practice? I realized there's a lot of information out there talking about the difference between the different types of magical journals, how to make one, what information to include, what order to write it in, flip through videos, and more, but there really isn't much info on what to do with the book afterwards and how to actually use it in your practice. So today I'm going to talk about how I use mine. I've realized after practicing for a while that some things will seem more obvious, but for a beginner they really might not be. So to some it might be obvious how to use your book, but for others it isn't, so I'm just going to talk about a few ways you can use them. Some people like to differentiate between the different types of magical journals and will have multiple for different purposes, while other people just put everything all together into one book. For example, some people will say a grimoire is a collection of general knowledge, stuff kind of anyone could easily find out. And then a Book of Shadows has more personal information, is often used more like a diary. Other people, though, don't differentiate between the two and kind of use the names interchangeably. Either way is fine, really. Although I recognize that a grimoire and a Book of Shadows are different, technically speaking, I personally like to just keep all of my information combined together and will use both names. To me, the name really isn't as important as the contents inside the book itself. I think no matter what you call your magical book, the purpose of them is mainly as a personal reference book. They can also be used as a journal or diary and as a record keeper of your magical practice and spiritual journey. So my most recent book that I filled out, which is the one I showed in that flip through video I mentioned, doesn't have all my information in it and only covers certain topics. The book isn't really that big, so I didn't have room to include everything. It's sort of like a single volume in a series of books, and the next one will end up having more information that I couldn't fit into this one. I've been practicing for a long time, so I have multiple books that are either personal journals, full of information, or that I use to take notes for ideas and spells that I'm going to perform. How I tend to use my book is mostly more of as a personal reference. I use it to look up any information I might need so that I have it all in one place rather than having to flip through multiple books or search online to find the information I'm looking for. This just makes it a lot easier when you're practicing if you have everything all together. For example, I have a bunch of information on correspondences in here, the colors, scents, elements, directions, spell timings like moon phases, days of the week, and hours of the day. In future books, I'll also include correspondences on things like herbs, crystals, oils, things like that. So when I'm writing a spell or ritual, I'll use my book to help me come up with ideas of things I might want to use for my intended purpose for that spell or ritual. What I personally tend to do is I have several spiral notebooks. This is, you can see it says book 1 on there if you can see it without it glaring. And this is just one of my books. And like stuff I do in here is I take notes and I'll jot down stuff, ideas. Like this was a full moon oil I made, and then I have this is like my notes. I don't put this stuff in my Book of Shadows. My Book of Shadows is more like a final draft, whereas this is more sort of like a rough draft. So like this, I put in like the full moon oil. I have the actual ingredients, and then I have when to mix it, how to use it, stuff like that. And then like under that, I just have random things like the dates of the Sabbats. And I have like a wheel of the year drawn on there. So these are just full of all kinds of notes that I then end up transferring into my more final Book of Shadows. Then, once you've written and performed a spell or ritual, you can write the finalized version into your actual Book of Shadows. This is a good way to keep track of what you've done and the results you got. So you know next time you want to perform it if you need to tweak the spell any. I also have another book that I didn't bring down here where I have my successful spells and rituals written down. And when I want to perform them again, I will use that book to follow the directions so I know what to do, the ingredients to use, what incantation to say, and all that kind of stuff. Your magical journal is also a good place to write down recipes for things like oils, incense, brews, etc. that you've made and liked so that you can recreate them in the future. You can also include food recipes if you're a kitchen witch. One of my chronic illnesses that I have has affected my memory some, so I also use my book to help keep track of informational stuff that I have a harder time remembering on my own. This includes things like the dates and associations for each of the sabbats and esbats, as well as correspondences and other general information I just don't want to forget and want to have easy access to. So in addition to my notes journals and my kind of regular Book of Shadows, I also have another journal that I use to keep a record of my magical experiences on my spiritual journey over time. This one is more similar to a diary, and some people will call this type of book a book of mirrors. I really like being able to look back and see how my practice has changed and evolved over time. What I'd really like to do is to eventually combine all of my general knowledge, personal information, recipes, spells, and all of that stuff into one big book that I can then use, rather than having multiple books, like my notes here, my Book of Shadows there. Like I said, this wasn't that big, so it's like a volume 1 or whatever. So if I continue in that style, I'll end up having multiple with the different information sections in each one. But I feel it would really be beneficial to have them all of that into one. This is something I'm working on, but it's taking a long time because I have to first compile all my information from all my different books together and decide what of that I want to actually include and what I don't really need to and can leave out, and then what order I should put it all in, and the actual wording I want to use before I can start actually writing it in my more final big Book of Shadows. If I was free to work on this project all the time, I feel like it would go a lot faster. But of course, I've got a ton of other things going on in my life, and there's other things that just take priority right now. So that's something that I am working on, but it's going to be a while before it's complete. Probably years, I would guess. Really, at the end of the day, you can use your personal magical book, whatever you want to call it, however you wish, and whatever way best suits you. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time I upload a new video. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Until next time, I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye and blessings.